marketing is more demanding than ever. More platforms, more data, more complexity. Keeping up is never enough for those wanting to lead. You need to outthink and outpace. But the old ways no longer work. Fragmented data, siloed teams, more effort for less return. It's time to redefine the line between ordinary and extraordinary. Discover the difference between what works and work that wins. Because when media, tech, creative, and data work together, you get seamless solutions, smarter decisions, and a measurable impact. With campaigns that turn heads and results that turn profit. That's how your business grows, accelerates, and thrives. Outperform targets, outperform expectations, outperform marketing.
Hello, it's clear. And welcome to what promises to be an inspiring day here at Google Amsterdam. I cannot promise you it's going to be more inspiring than being next to the beach right now with the cocktail, but I can definitely tell you we will be addressing some of probably the most fastest changing topics in the industry, and that is measurement. I am Jessica, I'm the Managing Director for Incubeta Northern Europe, and I am excited to be here today to kind of host the event and bring to you a couple of key voices in the industry as well as in our organization. A couple of things before I hand this over. We've got quite a big lineup, so I ask everybody to really be in the room, participate, ask as many questions as you possibly can. This is why the team and what they are ready and prepared for. Before we begin, the session will run for 3 hours with a 20-minute break in between. We will absolutely be sharing the presentation post the event, and we invite you to please stay for drinks. At the end of the day, a nice refreshment before you hit the road, which will probably be quite hot, as we all know, and it's been probably the hottest topic for today. Now, before I hand over to one of the key voices of Incubeta, Michael, I want to just kind of land one key message, and maybe this is a message that you will kind of prime yourself as you listen to a lot of the keynotes we have today. Marketing budgets have been under scrutiny more so than ever before. And measurement has always been the one answer that we've all kind of geared ourselves towards getting right. But more so than ever, it's not just about measuring. It is about outsmarting, it's about being faster and gaining actionable insights faster than any one of your competitors can. Today that I hope that I can bring forward a team to you that will have boardroom level conversations and will teach you some of the toughest conversations that they're having, as well as some hands-on conversations of topics around how we practically bring some of these frameworks over the line. And then ending us off with probably one of the most key things. We'll give you all the frameworks. You've probably heard of them all as well. But nothing summarizes or brings a framework to life other than a mindset. And our keynote today will address how that mindset can win when you take the right framework and the right team on the right journey. By handing over to one of those key voices just to get us set up for today, Michael.
Do we use this guy? Do we use this guy or do I use both?
You can use both, but then how do you click?
They're both red. Now it's green. Okay, good. Hi guys, I'm Michael. Thanks for coming. I'm surprised at the turnout, seeing how hot it is. I heard Google is going to give us all raketjes later, so get ready. I'm Michael. I look after solutions for Incubeta. I've been in the business for 14 years, which feels like a lifetime, but pretty good. What do we do as Incubeta? A few things to mention. We're all about outperform marketing. You guys have seen the video. I'm not going to repeat what's in the video, but ultimately, where we excel is really bridging the gap seamlessly between media, between creative, between technology, between measurement, and bringing that together for clients in ways that don't look at CTRs or vanity metrics, but in ways that really look at measurable real business outcomes. That is really what excites us. A little bit of a very, very short story around that. We do that essentially in 3 different buckets for clients. We help clients achieve rapid results they can trust. depending on how you look at the world, that's dealing with the brilliant basics or the boring basics, or maybe a little bit of both. Making sure you have the right foundation for success, making sure you can scale, and also making sure that all of this AI stuff can actually be done with the right foundation in place, right? We see lots of clients jumping to the endpoint without having the right foundation in place. It's really, really important to have. With the right foundation in place, we help clients drive things better with adaptive automation, right? That can be leveraging AI. It can really mean making those silos come together more and really making sure you and your clients or our clients can excel there. And we like to push the boundaries, right? I mean, once you have that foundation set up, once you have your little machine working, what more can we unlock? And generative growth really excels there. That's where we do our Gen AI pilots with clients. That's where we build conversational agents that really push their boundaries. That's really where we make a difference. Ultimately, and we've seen this slide many times, right? But we used to just look at media silos. We said you need to combine your search and your social and display. When I say that, it sounds really old-fashioned now, right? I mean, if you're not doing that, please leave. You know, I mean, we should be there by now, right? But ultimately, those are not necessarily the silos that we need to be looking at today, right? You have your data, you have your media, you have your creative, you have your tech, and you have your, I don't like the word, you have analytics sitting in there as well, right? I mean, ultimately, those need to come together. And ultimately, AI plays a role in how those come together. If you haven't broken those silos down, good luck trying to leverage AI. Good luck trying to leverage a lot of the stuff that we'll talk about today, because you're not setting yourself up for future success. We do that in 3 buckets, and I'll stop pitching Incubeta and we get to the fun stuff. We have our outperform solutions that really drive our outperform narrative. We help our clients through our outmeasure solution, measure better, excel more, don't run MMM as a silo, run it always on, have a culture of experimentation. We help clients outsmart the competition, better media planning, better media plans, absolutely kick-ass execution, and we help our clients out-curate through driving the right performance creative at scale, leveraging AI where it makes sense, not just because it's a hype, and really driving things forward. That's the outperform stuff I wanted to tell you guys about. Let's start talking about measurement, guys. Welcome to the post-single metric, post-single model, sort of with cookies measurement era, right? I mean, that's really where we stand. There's a lot going on in our space, right? And Google makes it sound like it's easy. Sometimes we make it sound like it's easy, but there's actually a massive amount of change happening, right? And we're dealing with a change almost in a situation where we're trying to make marketing come closer to actual business output a lot, right? And this is, I always like to use these cartoons because I think it's really relevant, right? I think as an industry, as measurement experts, sometimes we've over-measured to a certain extent, right? The fact that you have access to data, the fact that you can build a dashboard around something, does it always add business value? Are you just confusing people? Are you just building a dashboard because you can? I mean, there's a danger of over-measuring, right? I mean, ultimately you can over-optimize. You can tweak models for very small incremental gains. I mean, are you tweaking a model, or are you measuring a model to win 1%? Or are you focusing on the upper funnel to unlock a whole new audience demographic, right? There's a big, big danger there. There's misalignment, right? Measurement can tell you the wrong things. The amount of times I've sat down with clients where they looked at stagnating business, but they said, yeah, the data tells us that, you know? If you don't have an exploratory approach to that, if you don't look further, the data will always tell you that, right? So this danger of over-measurement is real. And the danger of throwing as many models as you can against something to find a story that you like also is real, right? But I am promising you guys a golden age. And not necessarily because of AI, but it's a little bit because of AI, right? Because ultimately AI will democratize how we look at measurement, how we visualize measurement, but specifically, I believe AI will democratize what measurement means. Right now, measurement almost is scientific, right? You're observing a certain state and you're referring back on it, and retroactively you're saying, was it correct or was it not correct? Guys, that's bullshit. That's not how we should be treating measurement, right? Measurement needs to become forward-looking, you know? Measurement has the opportunity to become super predictive, to start driving things forward much more, to become trend versus observation, right? So that's what we believe in. And we believe AI will drive that, you know? AI will bring the office of the CFO and the CMO together, and it will drive this uniform vision of how that's all done. No one needs another dashboard, and this is really important. I mean, the amount of Looker Studio dashboards we have in our business, I think it's horrendous, you know? And I'm being critical of ourselves here, but that's okay. I'm part of the same mistake. We believe we just build another Google Looker dashboard for our client. We build another one. We have some clients and have 30 Looker dashboards with us. Who the hell looks at 30 Looker dashboards, guys? That's a job in itself, right? But that's not real. So really condensing that stuff becomes so important, right? I'd rather steer clients on 2 or 3 metrics that really make a difference versus giving them 30 Looker dashboards with different vanity metrics for each little department, each little person. It's not the future, right? And again, AI can help us get there, right? So we need to really switch from the how and the what of measurement to really the why, and predominantly the why of the future, right? That's really what we need to do. We need to move to, I believe there's a future for dashboards, by the way. I'm not killing dashboards here, but dashboards need to be supplanted by the right level of conversational insight and the right level of storytelling, right? And we can do that with a whole bunch of A's and a whole bunch of I's, right? I mean, ultimately AI allows us to unlock the value of measurement better than ever before. That's what we believe. But there's a few conditions, right? You need to look at how accurate is what you do, how agile is what you do, how agnostic is what you do, how available is what you do, and how actionable is what you do. I promise, guys, I did not use AI to find everything that starts with an A. That's my own brain. And it needs to be insightful and impactful at the same time, right? This is really crucial. And this is the stuff I'll talk to you guys about today. And then the other fantastic speakers who know way more about this topic will go a lot deeper. I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes on this slide. I'm not. This is fascinating. So this was my little geek out moment when I looked at this. So, and this is the only Google propaganda slide we'll have today. I'm not sure if anyone knows about the ELO score. The ELO score is a score, I think, developed by a Hungarian guy in the 70s to measure chess players and to measure zero-sum skills. So it's used in esports, it's used in chess. But what you now also have, and again, my non-tech mind found this out, they're scoring LLMs. So you have this thing called an LLM arena, and all of these LLMs are tested against each other. And they're mapping on this scale, they're mapping the LLMs out there against the cost of usage, right? And again, this is the only Google Kool-Aid slide we'll drink, but it shows that Gemini excels in all of these areas, right? Why is this relevant? We're making a pretty big bet building a lot of our foundation on Google, right? And it's important to consider, if you're doing that, are you making the right choice for technology? Are you using the right platforms out there, right? You see the little deep sea guy sitting out there, but this moves really fast. I gave the same presentation I did today in January in London. This thing looks completely different. That shows how fast it's moving, right? Only takeaway for you guys, things are moving fast. Google has got you. And it's an important thing to consider, right? I mean, thinking about it more and looking at how we work with AI within Incubeta, right? We're not replacing people. We're enhancing solutions, we're enhancing ways of working, and we're predominantly making information or complex information more easily distributed towards our clients and internally, right? There's super nice use cases Google has built. I'm sure most of you have played with Notebook LM. I think it's one of the coolest ways that Google is really bringing the power of AI to complex data sets. You have all these complex data, I think they call it deep research. You have this deep research agent that Google has. It's fantastic, you know? I mean, we use it a lot to argue with us or against us for certain topics, right? Absolutely fantastic to leverage like that. You have other guys out there like Anthropic, right? They build these really strong marketing analyst agents. And that's scary, right? We look at these agents, we're like, fuck, you know, this is work that we used to charge our clients a whole bunch of money for. And it would take it weeks. And you have these agents out there and it takes 5 minutes. Yeah, it's scary, but it's exciting at the same time, guys. So that's almost how we need to approach this. It feels like an industrial revolution hitting us. How do we do that? We do that by being accurate first and foremost, right? I mean, ultimately, the strength of your data foundation and how clean your data is, it sort of predicts your whole journey here, right? I mean, we use the words trash in, trash out a lot. I mean, if you don't have your data foundation shored up, if you don't have the right confidence, if you don't have the stuff cleaned up and nicely organized, again, it's boring. And it's usually what our clients don't want to speak to us about. They want to speak about fancy Gen AI stuff, right? Not about this stuff. This is way more important, you know? This is really where it starts. Having accurate data, having it accessible in a reliable way, making sure it's structured the right way, you know? Super crucial. AI will play a big role in here as well. I mean, we believe that a lot of the ETL platforms out there today will look very different a few years from now, just because of the role AI will play in structuring data, organizing data, cleaning data, shoring it all up. And ultimately, this accuracy will help us to focus on what really matters, right? Really cutting through the clutter. Agility is important, and I had to drop this statistic in there. I know there's some publishers in the room. I don't want to kill your business, but there's just so much happening, right? I'm not sure if you guys saw the Cloudflare CEO. He released some statistics, and I'm going to read them up. So Cloudflare, of course, sit on top of all of these web requests that go to websites, right? So 10 years ago, the crawl ratio to visit ratio of a Google crawler to a website a visitor Google sent somebody was 2-to-1. So the crawler stopped by 2 times and Google dropped a visitor off on your doorstep 1 time, right? That's 10 years ago. 6 months ago, it was 6-to-1. And today it's 18-to-1. So the Google crawler stops by 18 times to enrich these fantastic AI overviews that we all have. And they drop a visitor once at the doorstep, right? That sounds pretty bad, but with OpenAI, 6 months ago it was 250-to-1. It's 1,500-to-1 today. Anthropic is even worse. It was 6,000-to-1 6 months ago, and it's 60,000-to-1 today. What do these numbers mean? These numbers mean that all the stuff we've been measuring is going away. You know, I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter anymore if somebody visits our website or if somebody visits our app, right? I mean, the whole world of content distribution is changing. But let's not forget, it's not only content, right? It's e-commerce as well. I'm not sure if you guys saw what Google announced at Google Marketing Live, where there's just this checkout function right inside of Gemini, right inside of Google, you know? Good luck with your UX and your packaging and your on-site discounts and harvesting email addresses. It's gone, guys. It's gone. Google is gonna dictate what dress somebody wants to buy, and you're lucky if you're allowed to sell it to them. I polarize to make the point, but we got to understand that this stuff is really deep-reaching, and it's going to adjust everything, the core foundations to how marketing works. Don't want to make you guys worried. There's really good opportunities in here, but it's changing. Why do I mention this? Because in measurement, this agility piece is really important, right? We have to understand that the evolution we're in and the turns of the wheel that we'll see, let's say, within the next 6, 12, 24, 36 months, will probably be bigger than the last decade in online marketing, I think, where we were all tied to cookies, websites, we brought in apps, we thought apps were crazy. The real crazy stuff is about to come, right? Just to get us all ready. How do you get there? By making sure you're ready, by making sure, like I said, your structure is the right way, you have always on data availability, and you can really, and this is where we are shepherds, where we can help our organization understand what's going on. Agnostic measurement is really important as well, right? I mean, we see, well, I had long discussions with Google about this. I think to an extent, Google might be killing the open internet, which is sad to me. But walled gardens are here, right? And they're here to stay, and they're only going up. And that's tricky as a measurement person, right? Because how do you navigate that the right way? So we almost believe in well, being agnostic is really important there. Embracing what the walled gardens can bring and teach and show you is really important as well. But really making this cross-channel measurement exercise like we used to do before, with cookies branching over everything, I'm not sure that's coming back, guys. I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, it's dealing with the walled gardens, it's dealing with the remnants that used to be the open internet. Let's see what's left in a few years. And really understanding how that stacks together, right? The good thing is, with Meridian out there, with Robin out there, there's 2 proper MMM platforms to work with. That's really exciting. But again, you need your robust data setup in place, and you need to structure your measurement teams to really work beyond models and platforms and interfaces, right? And not just your measurement teams. I think I'm building a bridge for myself. The data availability is really important, right? Where do we see our clients really drive value out of the investments they're doing in the measurement stack? The moment non-measurement people understand what the hell's going on in there. The moment non-data scientists can actually go in and run prompting that actually gives them the data insights, right? That's a really, really key difference. We almost need to work as measurement experts in this room to democratize what we do as much as possible. The more we do that, the better measurement works in the organization of our client. It needs to approach their needs, their format, their way of working, right? You're not going to get a CFO to stick to your way of how you're measuring marketing. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to adjust to their world, right? That's really important. And we believe that wider access means faster velocity in your data and much greater impact. So this is an important thing to consider. This is where agentic AI will play a big role. Again, only here, right? Having the stuff in place, setting up your foundation, getting your models in place. This is where agents start playing a big role. At this point in time, disseminating the information to the right stakeholders with the right data point. I saw Gartner release a study, I think it was today or yesterday, where they said 40% of Gen AI projects fail. I thought it was pretty optimistic. I think many more fail, to be honest, because clients don't know what the hell they're doing. They're starting somewhere at the end, and they don't have the right stuff in place. Maybe this is a nice fireside chat conversation for you guys to have, because this is where the rubber hits the road, guys. This is really crucial, right? And ultimately, the actionability is really important, right? And this is where we need to start looking at measurement as a driver and a predictor of future success, but also as something that acts, right? I mean, the fact that we see things in a Looker dashboard and that a person then needs to log into a platform to make a change, that's really old-fashioned when you think about it, right? I mean, it's how we functioned for 20 years, but it's not how it should be. We need to bring these things way closer together, and we need to make sure that not that the systems run everything, but drive the systems the right way, you know? Make sure that the proactive adjustments are made, suggested, and can be executed by these platforms, right? That's how you bring measurement to the heart of an organization. It's how you bring data to the heart of the organization. And ultimately, this is where we want to get to, right? Where we want to get it to. Things need to be impactful and they need to be insightful. You cannot only focus on impact if you're not providing the insights. That's building a black box. If you only focus on insights and you're not driving impact, well, you're not really nailing what we're supposed to be doing, right? So this is ultimately, to the C-suite, to the boardroom, this is what people are looking for. How can you drive impact, but how can you give me the grip that I know what the hell's happening, right? It's really, really important. What can we do? What can you do? You know, I mean, curiosity is always one of the first things I list. Being curious and experiment with what's out there. There's so much stuff out there, guys. And sometimes I look at people in our organization, but I do it myself as well. It's like a rabbit in the headlights, right? There's just so much going on. Where do you start? It doesn't really matter. Just start somewhere, you know, do something. And lots of our clients are like that as well. They've heard about these things and they're working through it and they really know what to do. They're a bit confused. Start experimenting, right? It's really, really important. And I think what's really important as well, and I hear this stuff a lot, specifically when it comes to AI, right? I tried it and it didn't work. I hear that a lot. Doesn't matter, try again, figure it out. The space is moving so incredibly quickly that what didn't work 6 months ago, there's a high likelihood of it working today. This is a really bad one. I hate this one as well. It's faster if I do it myself. That's like the worst, guys. Please don't say that in your lives ever, you know? I mean, you need to embrace the element of automation, embrace the element of scale, and understand if you spend more time in building a machine or an automation around something that can drive things forward, that's how you win. And then the last one, I have no time for it. That's even worse. You know, if you have no time for experimentation and curiosity as a measurement expert, it's challenging, you know. Speak to your manager, speak to your shareholders, speak to your board, but that's the wrong way of approaching it in the time and age we're in. Think beyond the measurement and data silo. This is what I just said. This is really where the next frontier of measurement will be, I think. It's really important. And be a data steward, right? And what I mean with that is make sure that we're at the forefront of this, right? Your finance teams or your fulfillment teams or maybe even your creative teams, they're not at the forefront of this. So if you're the front runner of this, if you're introducing these new ways of working, these new ways of thinking, that's exactly how you can help your own organizations, your own businesses, your clients' businesses, right? So that's, I think, the last part I want to leave you guys with. And that's what I wanted to tell you guys today. Thank you very much. We are off to a fireside chat, and I think, Jess, you'll bridge it all over?
Yes, so thank you, Mike. Whilst the team does a quick setup, I think, Mike, powerful start, and I think there's a lot of food for thought there for us. The industry is changing rapidly. There's investment needed, but at the same time, we're being scrutinized for all the investment we're making. So to elevate the conversation, we're going to bring forward Jacques, we're going to bring forward Rutger, and they're going to address the hard questions. What are boardroom discussions all about when at the same time that CFOs and CEOs are struggling to get these marketing budgets released? They are also trying to speak to their teams to innovate more with a bit more freedom. Jacques, Rutger? over to you.
Wanted to make a big appearance, but let's just sit down and.
There's no drum roll. What's up with
There's no drum roll, no music, no Eye of the Tiger. So, hi all.
Hello, everybody.
We're going to get straight into the questions. I'm just looking at my own picture. That's generative AI. That's not me, in case you wonder.
That was me when I still had eyesight. If I take this over, I'll squint a little. Anyhow.
So what's worse? So I think, like, very clear, right? I think we live in a very complicated time, and I think it is important to recognize that. If you look at marketing, it's a pretty old job. It's a pretty old craft, and there's a lot of expertise in it. And we're literally moving from a world where you would just show a print ad when people were reading, to a radio ad when people were listening, or something video when people are watching a television screen. That's still really ingrained in how we do our jobs, to a world where people are streaming, they're scrolling, they're shopping, and they're searching in ways that we've never seen before, but also at the same time. So a question I have for you, but I think also to the audience, is like, how can you deal with the fact that when people use Circle to search, which is you see something great on your screen, maybe you're using Instagram. I hope no one here is using Instagram, but everyone is on YouTube Shorts. So let's say you're on YouTube Shorts or you're on Instagram. You circle a pair of sunglasses that you like. It prompts basically a shopping question, and it actually takes you to a store straight away. That is not a discipline. That is actually doing social marketing, it's SEO, it's feed integration, and it's measurement all in one. Which is a very logical complexity that people need to deal with. Yeah. So how would you look at it being a company that helps?
That's a great setup. I thought you were going to give me a softball question first, so thanks for the tough one.
I gave him different questions.
Okay, so no, we're just kidding. No, I think, I think a lot of these advances are often driven by consumer behavior. And what you're talking about, if you think about people, it's actually taking static out of the system. So I'll never forget, one of my early marketing mentors said to me, how easy are you to trade with? And I think not enough companies ask themselves that question all the time. They get very internal. These are our T's and C's. This is what's important to us. This is how we want to do distribution. This is how we want to price. Not actually, am I making it as easy as possible for that person on the other side of this trade to just get on and do the shopping? And I think digital transformation changed that. I think AI is really adding fuel to the fire. I mean, the points that Michael made, I think, rather kind of provocatively, but that's his job, right? Is to say, listen, we're almost in this world where a lot of what we did in the past, and you and I talked about it previously, a little bit of that supply and demand side is going to be automated almost at a machine-to-machine, algorithm-to-algorithm level. So what does that mean as a marketer? A big part of things like place, distribution is going to be completely automated. So how do you then show up? And how do you then show up in this world where consumer behavior is changing the way that you just described, right? So I think firstly, we can't fight people. Firstly, we're social animals, we know that. But secondly, we like convenience. We're actually inherently quite lazy. Or maybe that's just me. But I know if it's very hard for me to shop or very hard for me to access a brand or a service, I find it to be a bit of a turnoff. I mean, I can't even deal with queues these days anymore. Like, I've got to stand in a queue, right? So I think that is what we're seeing. I think a lot of it's driven by consumers. I think we're seeing it in search, right? How quickly AI overviews, and you guys are innovating with AI mode, and I think ChatGPT is teaching people to behave in new ways. We're not quite at that tipping point, but I think we're going to see it. So as a marketer, Rutger, I think the key thing to do is to say, how do I manage my estate? How do I manage? Michael talked about that foundation. How clean is my data? What is my data lineage like, so that I can go with that trend? Mm-hmm. So how do I feed my content into large language models so that I'm part of that change and not try to resist the change? Because you hear it. When Michael was speaking, I was almost going, oh my God, Michael, you're going to scare people. I'm going to just like curl up in a corner and go, please go away, right? Mm-hmm. But I think you can, as a marketer, because of digital technology, because of the tooling that Google provides, you can be part of that change, but that change is definitely coming.
I think a challenge is like how you find, like, marketing at the same time is under immense pressure, right? And I think it's always been under pressure, but right now it feels like it's pressure from always. It's pressure on cost. We need to do it cheaper. We need to do it with less people. but maybe even more important, faster and quicker. Isn't one of the most fundamental issues before you do all of that, right? Because we can all see how AI will, well, it's much cheaper than a photographer and I look much better as well. You can see it in production costs. There's so much attention for that, but growing the importance of marketing again and bringing it back to the boardroom so it becomes an actual profit center for a company, not something you just do because you do that as a big company. How do you see?
Yeah, it's, good old, I don't know if anybody has done that recently, just good old data measurement frameworks. Some of my happiest moments at Incubeta is we kind of joke, I think Michael talked about it, the world of the CMO, like digital transformation was the world of the CMO and the CTO meeting each other, or the CMO and the CIO, or the Chief Digital Officer, the rise of the Chief Digital Officer. I think we're at the precipice where it's now going to be the marriage of the CMO and the CFO again. Because I think the CFO in the boardroom found a lot of the vanity metrics of the digital economy very off-putting. Like, you're showing me all of this stuff, but it's not, I can't see it in my results, right? You're telling me all of these likes. Well, what does it mean for my business? I'll never forget one client of mine said, I've just spent X on influencer marketing, and I have no idea what it's doing for my business, but I kind of need to do it because the board tells me I've got to do it, right? So I think that disconnect, I think, is actually going to disappear now, because with AI, you can clean your data a lot quicker. If you can't do it, a lot of that data cleaning, a lot of that basic work can happen quicker. But I think you can present marketing data in a way now that's far more meaningful, a lot quicker. And I think we can help not only with, I think retroactively explaining things. Michael talked about living in the past, but I think we can look forward more. And I think that's often what the boardroom needs. They need forward-looking guidance. And marketing, don't just come here and tell me a lot of people liked what we saw, and we had a return on ads of X, but we're still not growing, or our profit margins are taking a hit. So I think using data and AI around smart measurement frameworks now and speaking the language of the CFO is really important. And we're seeing it. We're seeing, finance people.
Can you give it because we call it the language of the CFO?
Yeah.
Could you share some examples?
I'll give you a great example. So
we need to master.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of large retail. We've got any retail clients in the room with us here today? So a lot of our retail clients, what we're seeing is there's issues in, especially with supply chains, with available stock and inventory. So having real-time data feeds to know what's available and not available. So a lot of what we do as marketers is now going back and speaking to the CMO and the CFO team saying, we need to stop marketing this because you're going to run out of stock. So we're looking forward, based on your supply, based on what we're seeing in data, we need to deprioritize this SKU or this product line or this brand and move to another one. In the past, the CFO would have thought, you're going to be the last people telling me this. You're going to tell us to spend more money, whether we've got the stock or not. That's just one simple example. I'll give you another example, other than kind of supply and stock. Whether it's a retail client, but many of our others, sometimes you don't even have to market to people. They're going to buy your product anyway. So just using data and AI to go, these people are so loyal. They're just shopping all the time. Let's create an exclusion list. And we use your first-party data and your transactional data, and we don't go close to that cohort because they're already in the bag. They're shopping. So I think if you show up like that as a marketing partner, you're speaking the language of the business. You're helping them with forward-looking guidance, and you build trust. So they know you're not just here to crank the wheel to spend more and just do more stuff, right? I hope that's a helpful response.
If anyone wants to follow up on that, you can always shout, and I'll ask it on your behalf. Given sort of the topics we just talked about, like I think we talked about the importance of meeting your customer and just being in the viewing it from your customer, then bringing that back into financial data, having the infrastructure in place for that. Can you share how much of your AI business as Incubeta is about this topic? But I'm actually more interested in how much is actually about creativity.
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a kind of an in-camera comment about Incubeta. And I know a lot of people are ex-Incubetans, long-standing clients, and some of my proud colleagues. Incubeta is probably not the most creative of marketing agencies, but ironically, our fastest growing capability is creative and content. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, if you just think about the changes we've talked about, consumer behavior and in search and AI overviews and everything. So organic content for traditional search engine optimization, how you now create content that's more authentic, is in the tone and appropriate for natural language, so you show up in large language models, is critically important. So, SEO is dead, long live SEO, but because it's going to be different. It's going to be for language model optimization and less for traditional search. Now, I'm not saying traditional search optimization is not important, it still is, but that craft's changing, and we're seeing a renaissance over there and more demand for that. But then, because we felt our creative muscle was underdeveloped, we literally burned the playbook. And we told our team, build the entire workflow from beginning to end with AI tooling. And obviously, we're using a lot of Google's tooling, which we love, right? VO, Imagine. But we use other tools as well, like Runway. And so we decided we're going to choose the best tools end to end. And if clients wanted cheaper, faster, quicker, better, that's what we're going to do. So we didn't fight it. So we looked at a lot of our peers, and they fought that trend, right? And it's partly, I don't want to get into their commercial models. Their commercial models are broken. So we said, let's have a commercial model that supports this move, but also a service that really helps. So in a way, creative is a little bit like the canary down the mine shaft for our industry. And you and I know it's just kind of a bit perverse, because actually creative is the thing that drives performance more than any other thing. So therefore, you've got to get it right. And it shouldn't be discounted. And I'm by the way, I think we're at the dawn of a creative renaissance. I think breakthrough ideas, breakthrough insights, that's going to move markets, going to get a huge premium. We just haven't seen that yet. And I don't think that's exclusively going to be the domain of the agency. I think it's going to be in partnership with the clients. I think we're going to co-create these things in a new way that we hadn't in the past. But I think for us, we're now looking at what we did with our creative team and saying across every single capability, and Michael and Max and the team will talk a little bit, well, Max after Michael, because Michael's had his moment. But Michael is working with every single capability, whether it's our ad tech or our marketing technology teams, our commerce teams, our media teams, to say what is our beginning to end workflow? How do we embed AI across every single step? And then what is the commercial application for that for our clients? So we don't believe in having a separate AI team that sits over there, or like a center of excellence. Like, you've got to embed it in everything. And it's partly about using the AI that's available from companies like Google, but also having our own processes and bringing some of our own IP in. So for us, we can't out AI Google or ChatGPT, or even some of our clients can spend more of it. We're looking for the edge cases where we can really add the most value. And it's often just the interdisciplinary benefit of what we do is where that happens.
I'm going to try and do a sample in the room. Like, I'll just call out 2 products, and then I want to see a raise of hands who's excited about which of them the most. So it's VO3 and it's Meridian, and maybe this group is a little bit biased, but who of this group is most excited about VO3? Okay, this is not a very good... who's most excited about Meridian? Oh, you're just not excited at all. That's also good. That's also good. No, but because for me the thing remains, right. I've been working in this industry in MarTech and more recently in brand building for I think 20 years or so by now. And we've always said this, like, you need to have your infrastructure in place, you need to have your measurement in place, and then something creative launches, like we see generative AI, and we get all excited about it, and we bring all attention to that.
Yeah.
I think Meridian is the most exciting thing that's been launched in a very, very long time. But how do we create some of that? Why do you think there is more excitement in general in marketing about what's happening in creative? And how can we bring some of that excitement into measurement?
Look, I think creative has always been the most tangible part of what we do, right? If people see a good creative execution, it gets people excited. It's very hard to get people that excited about data, but I think that's where the agentic solutions are just so incredible. If you see agentic solutions well executed, it's literally like you watching wizardry. It's like alchemy, right? I was telling the team are working on an agentic solution, working with Google for a client who shall remain anonymous. They're not in this room, so I can talk about it. But they're one of the world's largest advertisers. They're in every single market, multiple products, brands, categories. and then to look across every single media plan and every market and look at their reach and frequency data in real time, that would have taken warehouses of people in the past to do and weeks. But because all their underlying data is clean and it's all tagged up and it's all structured in a way that it could be read through an agentic interface, and it's now well trained, within minutes, you can see which market, which product, which brand is lagging its reach frequency data in a conversational way. I mean, any marketer who sees that, or anybody who loves our craft, you look at it and you go, holy smoke. So I think that like the agentic space is really where, through a multimodal experience, I think data can be as exciting as traditional creative. So there's one for the data guys.
That's good news. I think that is something everyone has to walk away with. Are there any questions in the room? Otherwise, actually, the next speaker just walked out of the room. So maybe we need to wait for the next speaker to be back into the room.
We need to think of another question.
I have plenty of questions, but I'm wondering if there's
Anyone from the floor
has a question for either me or for...
I think experimentation is really important. I know Iram's going to talk about it from Booking. I really do think, and Michael kind of was poking the bear on that a little bit. You know, I think there's no such thing. I think, Michael, you said, oh, it failed. I think as a data practitioner, every time I hear people say, oh, we did a test, or we ran this model, it failed. I go, no, there's no such thing as failure. It's a learning. We need to be curious. Every single time you try something, it's got to be, we've got to think of these, everything in marketing needs to be thought of as a design of experiments. I think one thing agencies have done poorly is we've stopped challenging clients. And I think we need to say to clients, listen, we hear you, we know what's important to you, but what we're seeing is this. Have you thought about A, B, C, D? Or what we're seeing through this experimentation is maybe that's not working. Maybe you need to change and we need to go in a different direction. So I think we've often become too executional. I think even Incubeta is we're a little bit guilty of that. So I think this notion of creating a culture of experimentation, learning, is just going to be so important, because we are going to make a lot of mistakes in this transition to an AI agentic world. But I think it's the people who are the most curious, who are going to experiment the most, who are going to see them as learnings, are the ones who are going to pull ahead.
And how do you build that culture? Because I think it's one to state that you need to have a culture of experimentation. Like if you're a customer of Incubeta, like how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sigh, clients, like you got to help us here. I'll give you an example. We have 2 existing client contracts. They absolutely want us to do AI. I love it. You know, we even won the business of what we show them in AI. We go through procurement and the bridge comes up. Whoop, and legal goes, no use of AI, no this. Everything has to be human curated, QA, and everything that the client wanted to buy and what they got procured, 2 completely different things. And then often clients would go, well, they're not giving me what I want. Well, you weren't paying attention in the legal procurement commercial phase. So I think we're all in this together. So I think that leap of working through the legalities, the trust, to allow the experimentation is really, really important. So being able to commercially procure AI-driven, whether it's creative or AI-driven marketing outputs, is something that is new, and we're all going through that. So I think that's important. And then outside of the legal commercial construct, new operating models. How do we work together? So for us, we feel if we're very close to clients' data, we're helping them automate their technology, we're going in as kind of trusted advisor, we're more than happy to work on outcomes and take an outcome-based punt with clients. And a lot of clients say they want to do that, but the reality is they back away from it, right? But I think we can't work in a world of time and material because so much is being automated. So I think just addressing those things proactively with your marketing partner is so important, because we want what's best for our clients. It's like we're in service of their brands, right? So I think that's some of the tough stuff that we need to work through.
So I think there's Boudewijn. I think I'll wrap up the session. I wanted to introduce you a minute ago, but you left. You left us. No, look, I have one final question, and I think we've talked about the bringing basically the value of marketing back into the boardroom. There's infrastructure, a lot of excitement around creativity. Let's bring some of that excitement back to measurement, and that's probably going to happen when we enter the agentic space. There is a role of experimentation you need to have, but that also requires you to think differently on how you partner. I think for me, a question is like, we talked about this moment, and it's maybe a little bit philosophical, of equilibrium, where everyone is using the tech, everything is using AI, supply and demand are automated. The moment where creativity and your idea and insight are going to be the only thing that's going to differentiate you from your competitor. How long do you think that's going to take?
You know, crystal balling on a stage is a dangerous thing, Rutger. Look, I think we're at kind of peak hype on AI and even agentic. I think we're going to go through the typical trough of disillusionment for a while, because I think a lot of clients are going to realize my data is not so clean. I'm struggling to build my own domain expertise, you know, call it a small language model. I think there's going to be a lot of things that we're going to have to get right along that journey. I think this world of kind of algorithm to algorithm, machine to machine based interface, there's going to be a lot of quick winners who are going to get a lot of scale and mass. So I think it's probably going to take, I'd say, another 7 to 10 years. I genuinely believe that, for this thing to fully come to fruition. But I think I was speaking to people earlier. I've got a 20-year-old son, right, second-year university student, living his best life using AI when he probably shouldn't all the time. But you talk to that generation, and I think even a younger generation, they're going to look at what we used to do. You used to sit behind a computer all day, bad posture, tendonitis. That's not going to be their world, right? You used to research things. So I think a lot of the white-collar factory work is going to disappear. So I think we're going to be far more present, far more thoughtful. And I think, who was I speaking to? One of our clients said it's going to be about the soft metrics. I actually think the companies are going to find their soft power, their soft metrics. I think they're going to win. And so I think that's where the creativity is going to come in. And when you think about the birth of marketing many years ago, some of the best ideas weren't necessarily ads. You know, so past story, I was there when we merged the company called Wonderman with J. Walter Thompson, and I had to learn all about J. Walter Thompson. For any of you know, was the world's oldest ad agency. Right? But if you go back to what made J. Walter Thompson great, like for Kraft Foods, they were the first people to create butter and sticks and had the measurement on the packaging. That was a great advertising innovation. It had nothing to do with an ad. So I think a lot of the future of marketing is going to be less about the actual ad and about the innovation. But I think as an industry, we're kind of 7 to 10 years away to getting there. But I think the journey of getting there is going to be very interesting.
And I feel a little bit embarrassed that I was on stage last week and I said 3 months.
Okay, shall we take a bet on that?
Look, I'm not going to make that bet because I think it's longer. Yeah. But I think the direction is clear, right? I think if you get measurement correct, you'll quickly learn that a lot of the stuff that we've done before will simply work 30-40% better when you use AI. Yeah. And that's a speed bump. We need to get over it. But once you do that on one area, the rest will follow really quickly. And then I think you can snowball or accelerate.
No, I think
it's optimistic.
But I think you're right about that sense of urgency. Because if you think about kind of the birth of digital and the internet, that all started in the 90s. And everybody got really excited in the late 90s. And then there was the dot-com crash. For any of you who are of my vintage will know about it and lived through that process. And then it was this disillusionment. But the people who kept at it and kept working hard then pulled Google. Great example, right? Google really excelled because it doubled down at a time when everybody thought, So I think now is the time to get ready and build that momentum. The moves you make this quarter, next 6 to 12 months, will set you up for victory 7 to 10 years out. Can't wait for 5 years. Oh, now everybody's using agentic and it's everywhere. To then go and have your playbook ready. You've got to start working, experimenting now, learning and getting ready. So got to do the work now for the benefit then.
Thank you very much. So we learned between 3 months and 120 months. We'll be there.
We're safe.
But I'm handing over now to, I think, the most important foundational thing to have in place. On measurement, here's Boudewijn.
Thank you, everyone, for having me here. But yeah, as Jess mentioned, I'm a director of director of data and AI tech. But my background is really working within performance marketing before moving more into the technical space and really trying to help our clients really understand some of these age-old questions of marketing and how we can use data and AI to solve them. And today, we really want to talk about the concept of incrementality within our measurement strategies. And what I really mean by that, and to one of Jacques' points earlier, what is the actual real impact of my marketing channel on my bottom line? How can I separate that from what is baseline? And starting to talk about how we can solve for that issue with the air conditioners as well. This is the perfect experience for us to be able to actually solve that. So I want to dive into the detail on some of these topics. If you've seen, probably one of these presentations from Bodewine or from myself or many other players in this space, you'll have seen that concept of, the triangle of measurement and triangulation and UMM and a lot of these key buzzwords. And really want to walk through how those actually work in practice and some tips for you to take you from kind of just starting out. We saw those percentages of so many people are only using one methodology to actually using them all in combination and becoming a market leader within the space. But yeah, as Bodewine alluded to, unfortunately, true measurement can't be achieved with a single approach. There is no silver bullet, right? A lot of people with the hype around MMM kind of seem to think it's going to solve all of their problems for you. But unfortunately, that's not really the case. And what we really need to do is blend all of these methodologies together. But because they all have their own strengths, but they all have their own weaknesses as well. So if we take our old faithful attribution that we've been, living and breathing by for the last 10 years, super powerful in the way that it's really fast to insights. We can get real-time insights. It's really accessible, really easy to use. And it historically has done a really good job of being able to measure quite a breadth of things. The scope of its measurements been quite strong. But unfortunately, we know that's changing quite a lot at the minute. We've seen with, increasing walled gardens, massive signal loss, that attribution is not really as powerful as what it used to be. But the main challenge we have with attribution is the ability for it to actually measure anything to do with incrementality. If you think about it, you could have the most advanced MTA model in the world. It still does very little to actually measure the impact of what would have happened if a user hadn't seen the ad, right? So it doesn't really actually measure anything in terms of incrementality. So to solve for that, we need to look at other methodologies, like econometric modeling, like MMM, for instance. And MMM is an amazing tool and really excited about Meridian and been playing a lot more with Meridian in recent months. The benefit of that is that the breadth of what it can measure is incredibly vast, right? We can measure anything. And what's more is that we can actually measure it against the business metrics that the CFO is looking at. We're not just looking at what Google Ads said or what Meta said. We're actually tying that back to the tangible business goal that you have, whether that be your on-site sales, it could be on-site plus your in-store sales, it could add an Amazon component to that. Really we can measure the impact of any marketing effort to that target variable. The downside of MMM, again, as we spoke about briefly earlier with Bodewine, there is an issue with you need a significant amount of data to be able to run it. And what that means is that sometimes MMMs can be at a higher level than we would ideally like them to be, just to make sure we can get that level of data. And what that means is that there is going to be some degree of inaccuracy. It is a bit more top level than what a GA is able to do and go down to the finest granular detail. So both of these can help solve each other's problems. But again, there's still some issues there. It is a model with MMM. It's still not 100% accurate. And this is where experiments come in. And I think this will be talked a lot about in the next talk. But this is the real key to making this whole system work. Experiments, can really hone in on an individual hypothesis or test case and get really down into the details and is your truest measure of how incremental a channel or a tactic might be. The problem being is that they're quite invasive to set up, and you can't run millions of them at the same time because you need to be able to isolate the signals. So really what we need to do is use all of these things in conjunction, or to use the first buzzword of the talk, triangulate. And essentially, what we're trying to do is use all of these tools in combination and triangulate on what is actually happening through the different methods. And this is often called about, again, to use another buzzword, unified marketing measurement, or UMM. Now, you probably have all seen these acronyms and these buzzwords before. So what I really wanted to do now is actually talk to you about how you can go away and put these things into practice and actually use them in conjunction rather than it being, I've been guilty of in many presentations before, just talk about it at a high level and not really going into the detail. So the first point that you can really bring in immediately to help your measurement practice and your strategy is making sure that you're using experiments to calibrate your models. So we already talked about before how MTA, you can have the most expensive MTA in the world, it's still not going to measure incrementality. So using a spot experiment about an individual channel and understanding a bit more about the incremental value of another channel can help you validate what your attribution system is telling you. And for a lot of advertisers, I know that's still a last click attribution model, which is in this day and age is kind of crazy. But this is how we can move beyond that and start to help the CFO or the purse string holders understand that there is more to what just GA is telling you or what your Google Ads pixel is telling you. But most importantly, it's really important to use those experiments to qualify and validate your MMM. So as we said, an MMM is always going to be inaccurate to a certain degree. It is a model and it is somewhat top level. But what you can do is upload all that information from your really spot centered, really focused experiments, can use that to actually validate and improve the accuracy of what your MMM is telling you. So by doing that, we can really improve the quality of the MMM model and make sure it's actually calibrated to what you're seeing on the ground. But then how do you understand really where you need to build those spot experiments? How can we actually find the points where an experiment will actually help benefit my model, both from an MMM and an MTA perspective? And the trick there really is to actually use the delta between what those two systems are telling you as an area to start running more experiments. So let's take YouTube as an example. For those of you, again, some advertisers still using a last click model. YouTube is always underweighted within those kind of models, whether it be in GA or even within Google Ads itself. But of course, an MMM designed to actually understand incremental business value, YouTube is one of the most attention-focused, attention-driven channels out there and will score really, really highly. So again, if we want to try and address, what is actually true between those 2 points, this is where we can start running these kind of A/B tests or user-based tests or geo-tests that Baudouin was talking about, or even just looking at something like a causal impact test to really understand what the incremental value of that YouTube investment is. And this is how we can really find those points to actually drive those experiments to help improve the whole process. And then finally, once you're really happy with what your MMM is telling you and you've validated all those results with various experiments, it's then about using that iROAS, that incremental return on your ad spend figure, rather than your ROAS, to actually drive your investment decisions and drive the way that you change your budgets. So with all these 3 things in combination, we get the real-time element from the attribution, we get the really specific targeted view from experiments, and MMM really being the glue that holds it all together and helps scale up what we're able to do with our experiments. And this is where we can get to with this approach. So now we've kind of established the base methodology. What we'll go through now is kind of a path to how you can get to the ultimate measurement methodology. What do we need to bring in the initial stages? How can we make sure we have the incremental best practices? How can we, bring in those rapid results like Mike was talking about before? But then how can we work smarter, not harder? How can we actually bring in AI and automation to make this whole process easier, bring some scalability, democratize a lot of this detailed information, reduce the reliance that we have on our data scientists that I know are a valuable resource in everybody's business. And then finally, how can we push on to actually market-leading innovation? What kind of generative growth can we bring in? How can we move beyond just media when we're looking at our MMM models? How can we start to factor in things like pricing, audience, creative quality? Because we talked about it earlier, Jacques talked about it earlier, that creative is such a vital part of any kind of marketing strategy and is often overlooked. We haven't really nailed the way that we actually validate the incremental value of creative yet, but through these kind of methodologies with AI built into it is really our ticket to be able to do that. So firstly, how can we nail the best practices? What are the rapid results? And we kind of talk about this whole process of triangulating through these methodologies as seamless measurement. And really, the guidebook that we see here, the challenge that we see, many advertisers kind of come to us with a project that's sort of failed before it's begun. They've just kind of half-assed an attempt at an MMM and just figured it would work and tell them and fix all their problems, but that is not the case. Can I use the term half-assed in Dutch? It works? Yeah? Okay. But really, with MMM on its own, without any kind of prior experiments integrated into it, is really not going to deliver you any kind of value. And Baudouin also mentioned earlier that a lot of people are actually only bucketing up their MMMs into just, this is Google as one piece of the puzzle and feeding that into the model. Whereas in reality, you want to segment that out. You want to look at lower funnel, mid funnel, top funnel, or maybe you want to separate out branded search versus your YouTube investment, or your PMax investment. There's a lot more clever ways to actually split this out to generate a more accurate and more valuable model. But experiments are really the key here. Experiments is really an often overlooked art form within the marketing space. I think over the years, it's just become like a separate job that the marketing teams, the media teams maybe do every now and then. But really the trick to actually building the perfect incremental view of your marketing is through a robust and planned experiment schedule. And I think hopefully we'll hear that from booking.com in a minute as well to corroborate that. But this is really how we're going to get value and really understand what is working, what is not, and improve everything else we're doing, particularly within the MMM. Because MMM needs to be at the heart, but it's the glue that everything's holds together. But again, on its own, it's not really going to work. And the final thing here is the single biggest mistake that we see advertisers make is really kind of entrusting the design and the deployment of their MMM to either just their media teams or just their data and measurement teams. And the reality is you need a blend of both skills to be able to actually run a successful project here. If you hand it over just to the data team, who are they going to tell you how much headroom there still is within branded search? What do they know about the decay rate of YouTube? You really need the media teams to collaborate there. But if you leave it just to the media teams, they're going to miss out a lot of, the data scientists' best practices that, again, are really vital to making this work. So really you need a blend of the two. And this leads us on to kind of what we talk about in terms of our MMM success factors. And Mike wasn't lying earlier when he said he didn't get those A's from ChatGPT. He just stole them from my slide, actually. So these are my A's. But firstly, the really key things to making our MMM project succeed boil down to these 4 points. The first one being it needs to be accessible. So we've actually worked around the Robin model, around the Meridian model, to actually create a UI that means that anyone can come in and interact with the project. So it doesn't mean that we have this huge bottleneck where the data scientist or the data engineer is the only person who can come in, integrate an experiment, tweak a parameter. We can actually get the media teams to be far more involved in the process. So what this means is, firstly, much quicker and less expensive turnaround, because we can actually specialize the labor that goes into these projects, and we don't have that bottleneck with the data scientists. But it also really helps with is getting stakeholder buy-in. If, again, this whole project boils down to the 2-3 people in your data team who only know what the hell is going on with your MMM project, it's going to fail, And by bringing more stakeholders, being able to actually contribute to the project and be invested in the project, we can make a much greater success. Secondly, we really want it to be actionable. An MMM project's not worth anything if you're not doing anything with the actual insights it's delivering. So, again, we focus on really trying to make everything easily available to interpret, and then download and upload into platforms, and making sure that we're making the right budget decisions within our campaigns focused on what the actual incremental value of those channels actually are. And within, again, we've worked on a system, it's pleased to know that Google haven't worked this out yet, but we have, how you can integrate experiments very easily within a UI to actually filter into Meridian. So again, super key to make this whole setup work. Third point, we need it to be agile. Again, a lot of MMM projects end up becoming, and I'm sure it's a barrier for a lot of you, come with a hefty price tag, because often they require a monthly or quarterly refresh of all the data, doing all that data gathering we were talking about earlier. It's painstaking. It's probably the hardest part of actually running an MMM project, is just gathering all the data. So doing that over and over again every time you want to run it is just not cost efficient, and it actually makes for a worse user experience because the data is not there when you need it. So what we always try and push with all of our clients is making sure that we do a lot of the upfront work, actually modeling and pipelining all the data into the model to make sure that data is always on, always accessible, and negate the need for those constant expensive data refreshes. And then the final point is that we want to be agnostic. So we initially built our system around Robin, but we have now rolled it out for Meridian. And often a lot of people come with the questions, Bodo, I mentioned earlier, I think, about the question of Google marking their own homework. I know that's a big fear for everyone, and similarly with Meta and Robin. In my experience, I can tell you that fear is slightly overblown. But what we try and do to help alleviate those fears and help people manage those conversations is actually run them both. So you can run them side by side, get the same experience, and you can decide which one works for you. And there definitely are various pros and cons between Robin and Meridian. And not just because I'm in the Google office, I'll say that Meridian is probably a bit better. Cool, so that's the basic steps. That's how we can achieve the rapid results and achieve those best practices. Now, how can we kind of automate these processes? And, as we said, MMM can sometimes come with a costly price number. How can we actually use automation and AI to not only bring that cost down, but also expand the number of people who really understand what the models are telling them? How can we democratize a lot of these insights? So first example of where we've seen this really working well is, again, in that question about how can I really, supercharge my experimentation process. Like I said, it takes a lot more brain power than you really think. There are media effectiveness specialists out there for a reason. It takes quite a lot of understanding to know when you need an experiment, what type of experiment you should run, how it should be set up, how you should integrate it within the MMM. And what we're seeing people do is trying to use AI to actually expand the pool of people who can do that by codifying, their experts into an AI agent. So firstly, we can easily automate that formulation of the hypothesis. We can, like we mentioned before, look at the disparity between the MMM and the MTA and find where there's huge delta, that there is an opportunity to run a test to actually validate and come to an understanding about which model is actually correct. We can then use AI to actually train, we can use AI trained on, our best practices based on, the volume of data you're seeing, the type of channel, actually looking at the geo. In some countries, running geo splits isn't really an option. If you're running a campaign in Australia or New Zealand, for instance, it's really hard to get a fair geo split. So there are best practices that vary by all these different factors. We can codify all of that into an AI agent, so you don't need our best data scientists to do that. You can all work that out on your own. And then finally, we need to automate the process of actually funneling those tests and those experiments, or as Google would call them in Meridian priors, into the MMM model itself. So again, we can automate that entire process. And again, turn what is something that I mentioned requires quite a lot of brain power and quite a lot of understanding into a completely automated flow powered by AI. Taking that a bit further, not only can we just build that whole pipeline, but we can really supercharge our team's understanding of their ability to analyze or query any kind of data set. And this is an example of our tool that we built to actually help try and turn our clients' teams into data scientists. So Google released something a while ago called Cosmos. I don't know if anyone's played around with that. It's a causal impact app that they developed. But really it helps laymen be able to actually start working within a causal impact environment and actually run and design tests. We've taken that whole bunch of steps further by integrating an AI agent within that. So really now anyone with zero data skills would be able to run a causal impact analysis just within this app, and really understand what the true impact of a certain change you made in a campaign or in a targeting setting or in a budget actually had on your bottom line revenue. And what's more, we also have like an AI built into this, which will write a 3-page PDF for you as well if you want to actually present this to anyone who's really into the detail here. So again, with AI, we're able to actually turn our teams and upskill our teams into actually becoming far more powerful when it comes to querying and understanding data. And then finally, for those of you who've actually spent enough time calibrating, working with your MMM that you really deeply believe in the value and the insights that it's giving you, we can actually begin to start automating how we actually activate those insights. So rather than just getting a readout, downloading it, uploading it if you've already done a manual approval layer, you can actually build this to actually write into the APIs of all the media platforms to actually calibrate all those budgets for you. So again, skipping out so many steps through this all three of these elements, we've actually automated the entire process of doing this whole triangulation thing, which is so complicated. So again, this is what we hope to achieve in terms of the automation element, but of course, there's a lot of issues we need to solve for first in the data cleaning and the data acquisition. But this is what's available for those who are ready for it. And finally, just touch on, how can you push the boundaries and stand out from the pack a bit more? And the thing I really want to focus on is, how can we take it beyond media mix? How can we bring in use cases that look at things just beyond how much you're spending on Google or with this specific tactic in Google versus Facebook, et cetera? And how can we start speaking to the CFOs? Because there's one thing, easily integrating your historic media performance, that's very easily done. Like I say, there's immediate improvements we can make, like bucketing things up to top of funnel within Google versus mid versus lower rather than Google as a whole. But we can also start to integrate, all the different drivers of demand and start to actually solve for some of these issues like how the weather impacts things. Because we can factor in all these different macro trends. So we can factor in, GDP data, we can factor in inflation, we can factor in things like the weather, and this will help us really be able to solve for a lot of these common problems. Next, we also have the amazing ability to actually factor in what the impact of pricing is, or pricing index compared to your competitors, in how much incremental growth a media channel actually provides. So we have our own price comparison engine. It's one of the bigger ones in Europe on the Google CSS program. We use this to help build like a comparative pricing for you and actually integrate that into these kind of models. So we can start to answer the question of, did that media channel actually affect things last week, or was it just that we dropped the price by 10%? We can answer those questions for you with these kind of things. And that goes beyond, just pricing. We can also think about how we factor in events, and again, things like weather signals. Then for more advanced advertisers, again, we who are using their audience data in a clever way, and they're actually building a synchronized way they apply their audience to all their different media platforms. We can actually take our analysis beyond just what is the incremental value of advertising on this channel, but actually incremental value of advertising to this audience on this channel, and can begin to factor that into MMMs as well. And then finally, one of the things we're doing a lot of at the minute is using AI to actually score creative, to allow us to build that creative scoring into the way that we run our MMMs, and be able to actually advise our clients on what the incremental value of quality creative is. And this gets us to the point where we can now speak with our clients and go, okay, if you have a couple $100,000 to spend, how much of that should you be investing in media? How much of that should you be investing in creative? Or how much of that should you actually be investing in discounting? What's going to drive you the best possible return? And this kind of engine is exactly what you need to be able to solve for these kind of age-old questions we've all had with how we manage marketing. So just diving into those, quick case study with one of our clients around the pricing point. And this one was super interesting. This was one of our larger retailers, actually. It was in Australia, so pretty far from here. But it was a great case study, so I wanted to share it with you guys. But they actually ran 3 different types of promotions throughout the year. I think they call them gold, silver, and bronze. And what we found by analyzing the impact, the incremental impact of these pricing changes through an MMM over years, was that we found that one of the 3 types of promotions consistently actually had a net negative effect on their business performance. So the discount they were offering actually outweighed any benefit they were seeing in increased traffic or increased conversion rates. And through this process, we were actually able to help them stop running that type of promotion, save a load of money, and benefit the business long run. And again, this is exactly the kind of conversation that the CFO wants to hear us having. And this is where that CMO and CFO can really start to work together to achieve these things. I mentioned, how we use creative within an MMM model, and I realize that's not the easiest thing to necessarily picture in your head. So just to break that down in terms of how we typically do it is, I don't know if any of you have used the ABCD framework that Google offered to kind of validate the performance of creative. No? Well, what we've done is kind of build on that a lot more. So with AI, we're able to understand, exactly what kind of things are occurring within the video, when certain brand messages are landing, what kind of components there are within a video. You can see in this example playing on the right for a client, they wanted to evaluate how environmentally friendly their ad was, and within this video there's a vintage car, so this is actually not that environmentally friendly, so it scored badly. But what we've done is merge all that AI video analysis with the media performance to actually understand what components of media, what brand messages are actually landing and driving the marketing performance. With that, we're able to then score those. So if you imagine that on a scale of 1 to 10, within an MMM, rather than splitting up by media channels, we can split up by spend on creative with a score higher than 7 versus lower than 7. And with that, we're actually able to analyze what the benefit, the incremental benefit of having that high scoring creative is actually driving. And again, get us to that point where we can advise on, is it worth investing more in media or investing more in creative? And then finally, just to leave you with one thing, just again to hammer home the point on how triangulation works, I want to leave you with another case study. This one is around how we invest in search and the incrementality of search versus your organic investments. So with this client, we found that they had a very differing view on the value of Google search between their attribution system in Google Analytics and what the MMM was telling them, right? So Google Analytics was saying search was driving so much value, the MMM wasn't so sure. You know, the incremental value of it is slightly less than what Google Analytics was saying. What we were then able to do is actually see that difference and start running some experiments to actually validate this theory, you know, that search maybe isn't as valuable as what GA says. And through those experiments, we did actually find that we saw some cannibalization of organic when we were running paid, but not 100%. So there was some overlap, but not 100% overlap. So what we were able to do is actually roll out our total search bid algorithm, which is actually designed to only spend money on Google over and above what value the organic's providing. So actually making sure that we're taking investment from areas in Google search that don't drive much incremental value, like let's say your brand exact search term. So for us, advertising on Incubeta as an exact match keyword, versus other areas of search that actually do drive exponential value and incremental value over and above what your organic's driving. So with that, we were able to roll out our bid algorithm, and you can see the impact it had on this graph here. So where that orange line goes haywire is kind of where we implemented this seamless search product. And you can see what value that had for the incremental value that search was having as a channel. And with that, we're able to actually validate the performance of our media tactics, i.e. moving to this new bid strategy through the MMM, because we can see growing iROAS, growing incrementality of Google, over 100% growth, in fact, whilst also, you know, I think some of the fears Google have when we run this product is that we're just saving on the spend. But in reality, we're actually reinvesting that in areas that are driving incremental value. So we actually saw 36% growth in the spend as well. So this is a really great example of how you can do that whole pipeline of measuring your attribution versus your MMM, finding those areas of experimentation, running those experiments, finding the true value, calibrating your MMM, and using your MMM as your barometer of how you should be investing your media and what tactics you should be using within media. You know, MMM is a really great vehicle for us to get out of this bottom of the funnel mindset that we've all been guilty of having over the years and starting to invest in the things that really drive attention and drive traction with our clients, like upper funnel, YouTube, creative. You know, these are the things that people notice and actually builds lasting impact with our clients. And this is really the vehicle for us to get there. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Max. Any questions? Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. Coming back to what Michael shared earlier, I'm trying to find a sweet spot of how to balance over measuring and using 3 kind of frameworks to measure your campaigns. So what's your advice on that?
So really, I mean, there are 3 different, I guess, practices. But when you're doing it right, it's all one thing, right? So it should be your MMM really is the glue holding all of these things together. But MMM on its own isn't going to be able to cut it. So the way it works with, let's use Meridian as an example. When you want to integrate any channel, whether it be Facebook investment or you might want to split Facebook retargeting versus Facebook prospecting into a channel. When you add that in, what you often add is something called prior information. So what you already know from your experiments that you've already done. So you might know that prospecting adds this much incremental value. It typically lasts this long. This is the lag between the conversion window. You provide all of that information into the model, and then the model is really what the source of truth is. So the experiments are there to help tweak and improve your model, and that's really what is showing you the incremental value. So your MMM is really the glue that holds it all together, but you do need these 3 different disciplines kind of working together to make your MMM work as best as it possibly can.
Right. So the 2 other frameworks are just sort of inputs for MMM then? Yeah,
you can think of it in that way, yeah. And of course, MMM, isn't going to be able to tell you if you launched TikTok yesterday, it's not going to be able to give you really great reads tomorrow, right? So there is still a lot of value in using some of the attribution best practices and being able to get the real-time feedback for shorter-term tactics. So they still play a role, yeah. But if we're looking about long-term incremental growth, what is really driving incremental revenue, business performance above the baseline or above seasonality, MM's your ticket to doing that.
Right, thanks. One more question.
Sure,
please.
go ahead.
So I saw in your presentation the last slide is about IROAS, and that is efficiency of the campaign. Does MMM help with the effectiveness of the campaign? So measure the incremental revenue or profit.
Yeah, essentially, when you get a readout from an MMM will look like, it'll tell you, obviously within GA, you have an understanding of what the ROAS of your branded search looks like, right? But what MMM model, which actually looks into the incrementality of a channel, will be able to tell you is what the incremental ROAS is. So actually, what is the incremental benefit, not just the pixel reported benefit over the spend. And with this system, what we've basically done is brought in an optimization to boost the incrementality of search by trying to reduce spend where it's not valuable and put it where it is valuable. And we've used this MMM to actually prove out the value of that tactic. So you can see where the orange line kind of spikes, this is where the IROAS is really kicked off because we've been far more intelligent about the way that we manage our search campaigns.
Thank you very much.
No worries, thank you.
Great question, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. Give me a few seconds.
So I was wondering, because just now Baudouin has also mentioned, or in general, we know that for marketing mix modeling, you need about 3 years of data. So I guess in this case, we would already have the data ready in order to implement this framework or solutions that you've just mentioned then. Is that correct?
I think in an ideal world, a channel has 2 years worth of data, but I think one of the benefits of Meridian versus Robin, so this is like a Bayesian model versus a regression model, is that when you work with Meridian, you basically are able to upload this prior information about a channel. So let's say you only have 6 months worth of TikTok. Let's say you've just started that again. Don't know why I keep using TikTok. You're able to actually upload, a lot of parameters about what you already know about TikTok. Like you've done these experiments, you know that the incrementality value you believe to be this, you think that the decay rate is this, you think the ad stock rate is this. And what you're able to do is upload those with some degree of probability or uncertainty of how, like an uncertainty variable of how sure you are whether that's true. And what that means is that Meridian's able to ingest that data straight away and actually start to leverage it. And if it disagrees with what your predetermined priors are, it has that flexibility to move. Whereas something like Robin, you kind of just set like windows that are absolute, that it doesn't have the flexibility to go over. So yes, ideally you have 2 years worth of data, but I think one of the benefits of Meridian versus something like Robin, as well as its ability to factor in something called like latent variables, so actually bringing in things like volume of searches rather than just everything back towards revenue, means that it's far more powerful at being able to deal with smaller and more kind of dynamic data sets than, let's say, Robin is.
Okay. And I was also wondering, since you mentioned the ability to embed it directly into the API and then optimize directly, and let's say we already have all the data and insights available, how does that API, let's say, implementation look like? So is it basically essentially real-time optimization then?
Yeah, so what you're really using it for largely is budget management. So if we know, again, and if you're really confident you've done all this work validating your MMM, you really believe in what it's reading out to you, we can actually automate what you would manually do anyway. So in most cases, people are kind of manually downloading what the MMM tells them. It says that the IROAS is actually 1.5 times higher than the ROAS. So we recommend, switching your budgets around like this within a scenario planning kind of system. And then you manually check and manually upload. You can automate that entire process. So what you would essentially do is, build right APIs to actually just upload change the bid structures based on that information and based off your scenario planning. So it's technically not that difficult to do. If you want to get into more like individual bid management, it gets a bit more complicated, but for most people, I think they're just interested in budget management at this stage.
Okay, thank you so much.
No worries.
Awesome, great. Any other questions? I see Jessica already. Oh, sorry, yes. One more question.
Sorry, I went too long.
Yeah, so I was wondering, do you ever validate the uplift that an experiment shows? And if so, how often you normally do that?
I think, again, with something like Meridian versus Robin, Meridian kind of does that itself. So by uploading your experiment as a prior with that uncertainty window, it has the flexibility to overrule what you've said as your prior information. Whereas with, as I said, with Robin, you put like very firm parameters in that says you can't go outside of this window that I've given you. Whereas Meridian can take that prior information that you have and kind of say, actually, we think the fit is much better when you do this. And when that happens, and when you can see that, you know, it's kind of negated where you've put that prior information as, is a perfect example of where you need to bring in another experiment. So where the Meridian model has actually taken it into a different direction would be a perfect example for doing a retest to actually double check your assumption, because every test that we do, of course, is true to a time and a place. And that data is, you know, constantly evolving, and in an ideal world we have experiments running on everything all the time, but sadly that's not feasible.
Do you have examples?
Well, let's take your example with the air conditioners right now, right? If you ran that uplift test or experimentation right now on your campaign around your air conditioning unit on Facebook, the data of that is going to be vastly different to when you do another experiment if you're doing it in December, right? So it's really important to make sure that you're cognizant of that and constantly reviewing these areas of where I need to drive far more experimentation to kind of validate and adjust. So within our system, actually, to your question about the air conditioners, I don't know how far I have to go back, but you can actually separate out, you know, baselines based on season as well as, you know, holiday, weekday, and intercept. So you can actually see that within the data set. But of course, like I say, it's super variable with things like the weather. So that is a perfect example, I think, of where you might want to have another test if you've done it so long ago, or it's been impacted by such a dynamic potential external factor that you haven't accounted for in the model.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Max. And thank you, everybody, for all the questions. Max will be around after the session to take any additional questions, so please do stay around. Driving us home, I would like to welcome Irem up to the stage. You know, long day, a lot of frameworks, a lot of ideas, often not as tangible, but hopeful. Irem's going to talk to us about how Booking.com is actually successfully doing this by having focused on a mindset and having a culture for testing. She will talk us through some of the steps that they're taking internally.
Hi everyone, thanks Jess for the introduction and also for the invitation to be here. I'm really happy to be here speaking about measurement. It's such a huge part of my work, and it's a topic that is very close to my heart. I'm not a performance marketer. I'm not working from Incubeta. I'm a product manager at Booking.com, and today I want to give you a different perspective on things. That's why I want to talk about experimentation culture. Because in my opinion, you really need fancy tools these days and high quality data, but without the support of a strong experimentation culture, then things don't fit together, right? You don't actually grow and scale as a company. But I know it's been a long day. I'm the last presenter, and it's a hot day. So let's start with some fun stuff. I also want to introduce myself a bit. I'm a product manager at Booking.com, responsible for Genius program, which is our loyalty program. I want to ask to you first, who is feeling like they're a loyal member of Booking.com? Always nice to hear. And this is our fancy new office near Central Station. Anyone who meets me for the first time hears that I work at Booking, asks about our office. That's why I wanted to put a picture here. It's our headquarters. We are around 5,000 people in product and tech. That's where most of our innovation happens. This 10 is for my, actually a bit more than 10 years in the Netherlands and 10 years in product management. And I'm very grateful and happy that I spent most of this time, or more than half of this time, at Booking. In fact, I still remember the day I got the offer. I was really excited and called my parents. And my dad was surprisingly confused. So he said, Iram, why are they hiring you? I said, what do you mean that? Like, come on. And he said, yeah, but I used the website yesterday and it's working. What are you going to do for this website? And he was half joking. But the good thing is, the companies don't think like that. Otherwise, you would have been looking at this version of the website every time we want to book with booking.com. And luckily, that's not the case. And we have a mindset of continuous improvement and totally always looking for ways to do things better. That actually reflects on our growth numbers. So this is almost 20 years of growth data. And you see a consistent growth trajectory with the exception of COVID times. Luckily, we bounced back really fast and grew even stronger. And that puts us in the place of leaders in the travel industry. And we are also one of the leaders in the internet companies globally. So to be more precise, number 9, still some way to go. But that's quite a success already. So I just want to take a pause here and reflect for a moment what you think could be the growth drivers for this. I already hinted that actually at the topic of my subject, but there are some very obvious answers to that. First of all, total addressable market is almost infinite, right? Anyone is a traveler. And with our generation, travel became almost a basic human need, and I think this trend is there to stay. The second factor is a very strong business model. We are a marketplace, and we take commissions out of every single transaction, which is pretty a solid business model. But if these were the 2 growth drivers only, then we would have expected to see our direct competition like Airbnb or Expedia or Trip.com also in the same list. But they're not. But they're great competitors there. They have really strong products. I think the key differentiator here is how we take decisions at Booking.com. So no matter what the decision is, from the most trivial to the most complicated strategic new thing, we always A/B test. And a refresher for the audience in terms of what an A/B test is, it's a form of a digital experimentation where any change you make on your app or website, you first split your traffic into 2 and you only test it with only half of your traffic. And you basically compare your selected metrics. And that really hints if there is incrementality with this change or not. I already gave you some few facts, like we are 5,000 people in product and tech, and we absolutely test every single decision. Any guesses on how many experiments we run every year? 2,000? 100? No, not that much yet. It also takes time to implement things. So the right answer is 10,000 per year. And we have 1,000 experiments that is running at any moment in time. So probably no one sees the same version of the website at any given moment globally. And we use experiments to validate any kind of like UI change from color of a button to more sophisticated things like ML models, pricing systems, new Gen AI features, trip planner, you name it. But that also brings a level of complexity, right? Like 10,000 experiments is quite a lot, 1,000 experiments per day or any given moment in time. Who is deciding if the results are good and if the experiment should go full on? It's not our CEO, it's not our CPO, CBO, not even the directors. At Booking, we have a completely decentralized way of decision making. So product teams, we have around, I think, more than 200, 300 product teams. Product teams take their decisions decentralized way, individually. And that's a pretty also challenging thing because there's a very thin line between chaos and excellence when you take decisions in a decentralized way. And in my opinion, this thin line goes through a very strong experimentation culture. So that's why today I want to take the rest of the time to walk you through, in my opinion, what the 3 key pillars of a strong experimentation culture, and I will also walk you through some 3 potential pitfalls, usual suspects I chose for today, and how to potentially mitigate or overcome them. So the first one is about empowerment. And what do I mean by empowerment is not just starting with why, but also leading with why as a leader. So you can be a leader of the organization or a department or even a team, but it's always important to give a clear and purposeful vision to your team, and really make it clear what success looks like for them or for the organization, what the North Star is, and most importantly, why it matters for the customers and how are they going to benefit it. And then once everyone also knows how their work contributes to that, just let your teams decide how to bring this vision into life. So I'm talking about a very bottom-up structure here. To give you an example from Booking, our mission and vision is to make it easy for everyone to experience the world. But we want to do this by being the one-stop shop of travel. So we want to be the single app. If people want to book an accommodation, a taxi, flight, an attraction, we want to be the single app of their choice. How it translates into my department, Genius, is because our loyalty program, we want to make it so engaging and so relevant for our customers that we reward and engage people across all the verticals and really enhance their experience and personalize their experience for them. But then it comes to people like myself, who are product managers, to figure out together with our teams how to make this happen. So it's our role to research together what is an engaging reward, what's a relevant reward for the customers, what are the problems that they're facing every day. That's why it's also really important to remember that there's a big similarity between product teams or companies with football teams, because the ultimate goal of any company is to drive revenue. Any company is there to grow and make money. So it's the same for a football team. Everyone is there to actually score. But just as in a football team, that not every player is there to score, also in a company, not every team is there to drive revenue. So there are different ways different teams contribute to the company, right? So it might be improving the customer experience so that they don't have to call customer support as much, or it could be to drive awareness or engagement, or it could be to really improve the funnel and drive more engagement or revenue. So it's really important to make it clear for your teams what their role in this. The second pillar is a shared mindset and a shared language. And what I mean is not necessarily English, because imagine your teams have now a strong vision, they are really empowered, they're motivated to actually solve problems and find insights, and they want to work together, but they need to speak the same language. They need to speak the language of data, so anyone in the organization needs to have a basic understanding of data and data literacy. And in my opinion, it's extremely important to also use a hypothesis-driven framework. This also came across in some of the presentations before. At Booking, we always use a framework. I'll just give you an example. Imagine, because at Booking, anyone, absolutely everyone in the company could propose an improvement, as long as they bring it with a clear structure and a clear rationale. Let's say someone in the organization came to my team and said, hey, Irem, I think we should up-rank the pictures within hostels that highlights the shared group areas or social spaces. Then I'd be like, okay, why? What makes you think that? Then this colleague might say, hey, I was there in a customer meeting, or I was there in a user research, and I heard that this was a commonly brought up topic. It seems like backpackers really value this more than other things. And then I looked at basically the most commonly asked questions to the properties, and this was one of the top 3 answers. That's a very strong hypothesis, and that also makes it clear which metrics we might need to choose to to validate this hypothesis. I think it was also part of your presentation, Michael, that we should avoid vanity metrics, right? It's really important to pick up a few clear metrics to validate our hypothesis. It's also really valued to have different perspectives in the company. That's why we think experimentation is a team sport. And that's why, for example, in my team, I always invite, although it's not their direct responsibility, I always invite developers to attend user research sessions, or whenever we conduct an experiment, we sit all together as a team, even with non-technical people like designers, researchers. So we all look at the data together and come up with stories and better understanding of the experiments. Because there's no such thing as failure, actually. So if you test something, and if your change is not validated, if your experiment is validated, it's not a failure. It's a learning. And often, we have to test things multiple times and constantly iterate on the things. Things hardly go full on the first time. Also, Max, you mentioned you had a customer in Australia that kept running campaigns that were not bringing incrementality. That's exactly the situation we are trying to avoid here. There are a lot of campaigns in Booking that didn't bring incrementality. We lost money. But if you lose it once, it's not a failure. If you lose it twice, it's a failure. The third pillar of an experimentation culture, in my opinion, is having a clear process. Because let's take a step back. You have a motivated, empowered team with a clear vision. They really want to work together. They have very solid hypotheses. They even built the product. They tested it. And then what? Who is going to make the decision? And most importantly, how are we going to make sure that all these decision makers are taking consistent decisions and they're high quality decisions? And what about if there are trade-offs? There are two key metrics that are moving in different directions. How are we going to make alignment between different teams? That's why it's really extremely important to also have clear decision rights and guardrails defined. We have a lot of data teams, even like since we have everything in-house, a lot of experimentation teams that provide us with a lot of guardrails, data guardrails. As I explained before, absolutely anyone could bring a hypothesis. So imagine like a customer-facing team, a sales team, marketing team, someone from customer support could reach out, and that's how we actually also come up with more of a social listening, growth, insight generation culture. But at the end of the day, product managers are the key decision makers in the organization, and we are really supported by all kinds of data scientists, experiment experts, and so on. And there are a lot of also directors if you need to consult in case of risks or exceptions. And it's also really important to bring the C-suite in the room, right? Not every day, but on a monthly basis, we also give regular checkups to make sure that things in the organization are aligned and all the expectations are met. And it definitely helps if you have solid data in terms of incrementality, then the discussions become much easier and smoother. All right, so we discussed about the three pillars. And I would like to talk about some pitfalls, because especially in a giant organization, so if you are scaling your organization and you're growing bigger and you have more of a bottom-up culture, a lot of things could go wrong. So I mentioned earlier, there's a thin line, right? You can always slip into chaos. So I would like to talk about three potential pitfalls. And one of them is losing speed. So if you're in an organization where you have to test every single thing, that takes time. Every single thing, 3 times at least. But I think there's a lot of value in it, because you only put things full on if there's proven business and customer value. So there's really a value. But it's important to actually balance the quality and the speed. So there it's really important to stick to agile principles. Really, 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 as a leader or like a team lead, really you should encourage and challenge your teams to always test the minimum. Test the minimum solution or piece of the campaign that you can test and validate a hypothesis. And only if there's positive signals, build on top of it and iterate. And the other part is AI, right? AI is not just for customer support bots. It's not just for trip planner in the case of booking, but it's also there at our disposal to accelerate and facilitate every step of the product development. From discovery, like deep research, I really love this deep research because then it gives you instant access to all kinds of industry reports. You can scrape the websites of your competitors, helps you generate hypotheses with a notebook LLM. Now you can really combine different pieces of insights together. It can really help you write high quality hypotheses. You can prototype extremely quickly and in a very realistic way. Flow Builder is a tool that I really like, or there are a lot of add-ons to Figma or whatever your preferred design tool is. And it also really speeds up the development process and coding. So these are really nice tools at the disposal of the teams. The second one, I think, is quite unavoidable if it's a large organization, is to have silos in the organization. What I mentioned earlier is like, if your experiment failed, it's not a failure, it's a lesson learned and something to celebrate. But if there are multiple times you fail, or different teams in the organization test the same thing without communicating with each other, it's absolutely a waste of time. And that's why I think as leaders, it's also very important to not just align with other leaders, but to create mechanisms for people and teams to talk to each other and learn from each other. So since this is something we really struggle a lot at Booking, it's a giant company of 20,000 people, we always try to ideate on different ways of overcoming this. And in my opinion, in the 6 years of time at Booking, some of the things that I think work really well are kind of demo days, where we showcase our products and pitch them in 1 minute to other product teams or colleagues, or having lightning walks, again, similar concept. We started using some enterprise AI assistants like Glean, probably there are more as well, which is basically an internal tool that you can access and search and consult to, like, has this been done before? Who is my contact point for this? So it's really, I think, useful. And having shared repositories. For example, we have a giant experimentation tool, which includes the historical data of experiments of 20 years, so 20 years times 10,000 is quite a lot of experiments that anyone can access. And with every single experiment, more than 2,000 metrics are measured. So you can really check what is the impact of every single change on any part of the customer experience. The last one, also a topic that came up a few times. I also heard Michael saying trash in, trash out. Fully agree. I cannot agree more. You can run 10,000 experiments, but yeah, if they're not matching each other, if they're not measuring the correct thing, if your data definition is not right, then it's also a waste of time. Again, it's an issue that we face quite a lot at Booking. I think it's also kind of unavoidable because a lot of companies also grow through acquisitions and new teams pop up. Everyone is digitalizing and measuring data. So it's quite often, it's like mushrooms, they pop up, fragmentation. So I think one solution to that could be oversight. It's maybe an intuitive answer to that, but I think it works. Like really assigning owners to conduct regular checks and incentivizing certain people in the organization to do these checks. Again, also for the same people as well could be responsible for this, but bringing structure in the data. So if you also want to incorporate AI, data labeling and having clean data definitions is really important. And the third point is alignment. So maybe not having a lot of dashboards, but having few dashboards that are really accessible for everyone, and keeping those dashboards up to date and giving access to everyone is really the key. Well, some final thoughts. Of course, we are a giant company. We are almost like first players in the experimentation. We have everything in-house at Booking, but to have experimentation culture or to do experimentation, you don't need to be a big company. You don't need to be a data AI native company. I think there are a lot of lot of different softwares out there, agencies and solutions out there that any company and any like industry could really use. I also worked at Philips before, and even there we ran a lot of actually A/B tests in social media, or we really tested our hypothesis through social listening tools. There are a lot of tools out there, so really utilize them. And what I started with my presentation is, tools are really important. Data is extremely important. But what brings everything together is a strong experimentation culture, and we all have a role to play to actually cultivate this and bring it to life. So I hope this presentation inspired you to change something in your organization or do something differently. If you have, if you want to discuss further or ideate together, I'm always available. Reach out to me, let's stay in touch. And I think it's time for questions.
Great, thank you, Irim. Any questions? Or are we all looking forward to the... No, one question.
Hi, my name is Bert-Jan, and you probably experimented with in-house AI tools that you can use to gather all your documents and plow through your emails. And so which top 3 tools did you test, and what was the best for booking?
Actually, I'm not sure if we experimented with the tools, but we are using, we are both using Gemini. So Gemini, which has add-ons to all our different enterprise tools, like we are using really Google ecosystem as well. So
The Google Works,
email,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We use Notebook LLM to really gather all the insights together, so all the documents could be integrated. And we also use Glean as an enterprise AI software. So we use 2 things at the same time.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if these are experimented, so that's proving me wrong maybe, because it might not have been experimented.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much for your insights. I'm curious, how do you safeguard that the test will not be repeated? Besides, you have the share library for all the tests, but what process is in there so all team member would know or be aware of what has been done, and we can use it and not reinventing the wheel?
Aside from all these sharing sessions and the shared intelligence of the company, because also people say a lot like, hey, I think this team has tested before, so that's also one thing. But the experiment library we have is, I think, one of the strongest tools, because you can really make a search and you can basically test with those keywords if something similar has been tested, and you can really access every single information of this experiment.
But what happens if somebody just don't do it and they just push a test live? Can you stop that, or
double test something?
Yes.
What you mean? I mean, it just makes you lose time, right? You don't have to stop the experiment. It's just a loss of time if something has failed before, and if you're testing it, you can test it again. But if something is showing very negative results and you want to push it through, there are some experiment police around, right? Like all the data scientists, and that's what I'm talking about as guardrails. Of course, you have the freedom, but someone is also doing the due diligence at the background. So there's also like a mechanism around that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any last questions? No, then thank you for your time. Great.